Keir Starmer loudly booed during Royal Variety performance sketch. Imagine spending your entire career clawing your way to the top job in British politics, finally becoming Prime Minister, and then getting absolutely savaged by a room full of theatre-goers who paid good money to watch song and dance numbers. Not in person, mind you, just your name. Just the mere mention of your existence was enough to trigger a wave of boos so loud it echoed through the Royal Albert Hall and straight into living rooms across the nation. Welcome to Keir Starmer's Britain, where even charity events aren't safe from public contempt. This isn't some fringe political rally or a rowdy prime minister's question session where heckling is basically a competitive sport. This is the Royal Variety performance, the poshest, most family-friendly, most aggressively wholesome event on the British entertainment calendar. The kind of show where people clap politely at mediocre ventriloquism and pretend to enjoy warmed-over comedy routines because royalty is in the building. And yet, when Dead Ringers did an impression of Keir Starmer during their sketch, the audience booed him like he just announced a tax on breathing. Let's set the scene properly, because this is deliciously awkward. The Royal Variety performance was filmed in November, aired on December 21st, hosted by Jason Manford, and attended by the Prince and Princess of Wales. It's all very establishment, very British, very let's raise money for charity while celebrities do their thing. The Dead Ringers crew, Jon Culshaw, Jan Ravens, MacLeod, and Duncan Wisbey, are doing their bit with impressions of politicians and celebrities. Standard fare. Everyone's having a lovely time. And then they do Keir Starmer. Not even a full impression, not a biting satirical takedown, just his voice, just the introduction of his voice, and the place erupts in boos. Proper, enthusiastic, deeply felt booing from an audience that was probably sipping champagne moments earlier. One reviewer described it as deeply meant booing, which is British critic speak for they really, truly hated that. Now, this is where it gets properly interesting, because the Royal Variety audience isn't exactly a cross-section of the British public. These are people who can afford tickets to a charity gala at the Royal Albert Hall. These aren't your disgruntled working-class voters in former Red Wall seats. These are comfortably middle-class or outright wealthy Brits who theoretically should be Starmer's natural constituency. And they booed him. Loudly, repeatedly, without hesitation. Social media absolutely loved it, obviously. One viewer wrote, "Haha, Keir Starmer getting booed on Royal Variety quality," which, despite the spelling errors, perfectly captures the schadenfreude of watching a prime minister get publicly humiliated at a variety show. Another said, "Wonderful to see Keir Starmer roundly booed when he was mentioned in the Dead Ringer sketch, because nothing says wonderful like watching political failure become entertainment." The best comment, hands down, was someone asking whether the Prince and Princess of Wales started the booing or just joined in halfway through. Imagine that. Imagine being so unpopular that people are speculating whether literal royalty was booing you at a charity event. That's not just bad polling numbers. That's cultural rejection on a spectacular scale. And here's the thing that makes this moment so perfectly symbolic of Starmer's premiership so far. He wasn't even there. He didn't attend the Royal Variety performance. He wasn't in the building. His physical absence didn't matter one bit, because the public's contempt for him is so strong that just hearing his voice in a comedy sketch was enough to trigger a hostile reaction. That's not political opposition, that's visceral dislike. Let's zoom out for a second and talk about what this really means, because this isn't just about one awkward moment at a posh theater event. This is about a prime minister who has comprehensively failed to connect with the British public despite winning a massive parliamentary majority just months ago. Labour won the election in July with a landslide, 412 seats, absolute dominance. And yet, by December, the Prime Minister is getting booed at charity events by audiences who should, in theory, be his supporters. How does that happen? How do you go from electoral triumph to public pantomime villain in less than 6 months? Well, let's count the ways. Starmer has broken promises, accepted freebies, fumbled communications, delivered wooden performances, and generally managed to make Gordon Brown look charismatic by comparison. He's raised taxes after saying he wouldn't, he's cut winter fuel payments for pensioners, he's released prisoners early to ease overcrowding, he's presided over continued small boat crossings while promising to smash the gangs. Every week brings a new reason for voters to feel buyer's remorse. But beyond the policy failures and the broken promises, there's something more fundamental going on here. Starmer is deeply, profoundly boring. He's a beige politician in an era that demands personality. He's a technocrat in an age of populism. He's a human equivalent of room temperature porridge trying to govern a country that's collectively lost patience with politicians who sound like they're reading from a script written by a committee of lawyers. The royal variety booing is significant because it shows that Starmer's unpopularity has transcended politics and entered cultural politics. When the general public at a non-political entertainment event spontaneously boos you, you've achieved a special kind of toxicity. You're no longer just an unpopular politician, you're a punchline. You're a cultural reference point for failure and disappointment. Compare this to other prime ministers and their cultural moments. Tony Blair had Cool Britannia. David Cameron had the pig thing, which was awful but at least memorable. Boris Johnson was a walking cultural phenomenon, for better or worse. Tia May had her robot dance. Even Liz Truss, who lasted less time than a lettuce, became a meme that people still reference. But Keir Starmer? His defining cultural moment so far is getting booed at a variety show he didn't even attend. That's not a legacy, that's a warning sign. The Dead Ringer sketch itself is almost irrelevant. It could have been brilliant satire or mediocre mimicry. Doesn't matter. The audience reaction is what matters. They weren't booing the quality of the impression, they were booing the man himself, or rather, the idea of Keir Starmer. The concept of Keir Starmer has become so unpopular that his mere presence in audio form triggers hostility. Now let's talk about the Royal Variety performance itself, because this event is peak British establishment. It raises money for the Royal Variety charity, which supports entertainment industry professionals. It's attended by royalty, it's broadcast on ITV during prime time, it's aggressively inoffensive and designed to appeal to the broadest possible audience. This isn't the platform for edgy political commentary. This is light entertainment for family viewing. And yet, even here, in this sanitized, safe, non-controversial space, Starmer is poison. Jason Manford hosted the event and got mixed reviews for his opening monologue about class differences and smashed avocado, which turned out to be mushy peas. Some people loved it, some people thought he wasn't funny. Standard hosting gig responses. But nobody booed him. Nobody booed Westlife when they performed World of Our Own. Nobody booed Stephen Fry doing Lady Bracknell. Nobody booed Jessie J's emotional performance. Just Starmer. Just the Prime Minister. The Prince and Princess of Wales were in attendance, sitting in the royal box, presumably being very royal and very composed, while the audience around them expressed their feelings about the current government. One viewer joked about whether William and Kate started the booing or just joined in later, which is obviously ridiculous but also kind of brilliant, because it highlights just how universal the reaction was. Everyone booed. Young, old, posh, less posh, royals, commoners. Everyone. This is what happens when you promise change and deliver more of the same. This is what happens when you run on a platform of fixing broken Britain and then immediately start breaking more things. This is what happens when voters feel lied to, ignored, and taken for granted. They don't just vote against you in the next election, they boo you at variety shows. They mock you on social media. They turn you into a cultural shortcome for disappointment and failure. The timing of this broadcast is particularly brutal. December 21st, right before Christmas, when people are supposedly in a festive mood and inclined to be generous. And still, they booed. Not even seasonal goodwill can save Starmer's reputation. That's impressive in the worst possible way. Labour supporters and Starmer defenders will probably argue this is overblown. It's just one moment at one event. It doesn't represent the broader public. People boo all sorts of things. And sure, fair points. But when was the last time a sitting prime minister got booed at the Royal Variety performance? When was the last time a political figure triggered such a visceral negative reaction at a charity gala? This isn't normal. This is exceptional. This is a symptom of something much larger. The comparison to other political figures is instructive. Boris Johnson was deeply controversial, but also weirdly popular with certain demographics. People either loved him or hated him, but there was passion on both sides. Tia May was mocked but also pitied. Gordon Brown was unpopular but respected for his competence. But Keir Starmer? He's managed to be simultaneously boring and despised. He generates neither passionate support nor even interesting opposition. He's just uniformly disliked by people who can't quite articulate why, beyond the general sense that he's disappointing. The social media reaction tells its own story. People weren't surprised that Keir Starmer got booed. They were delighted. They found it funny and satisfying. There's a certain glee in watching powerful people get publicly humiliated, especially when they seem to deserve it. And right now, fair or not, a significant chunk of the British public thinks Starmer deserves it. What makes this particularly painful for Labour is that they're not even a year into government yet. Usually, new governments get a honeymoon period where voters give them the benefit of the doubt and time to implement their policies. Starmer's honeymoon lasted approximately 17 minutes. By summer, people were already turning against him. By autumn, his approval ratings were underwater. By winter, he's getting booed at charity events by audiences who should, in theory, be